large-scale work conducted by chemical defense troops commanded by Igor Kirillov, who was killed at the instigation of the Kyiv regime. We will give links to his fundamental briefings based on facts and data. These measures are not enough to remove Russian concerns and claims with regards to U.S. biological activity. The state financing of biological research abroad through the U.S. Defense Department will be continued. The document does not restrict such activities if it is controlled by the U.S. and it is in accordance with American standards. So risks to and threats to international security, including as far as the Biological Weapons Convention goes, so these risks are maintained. Now we have to look at different military and biological programs on the territory of Ukraine. It violates BTWC. Russia has tried to get answers with regard to the aforementioned activity. We intend to further ask these questions to get an exhaustive, comprehensive information and explanations. We hope that the current U.S. administration will take necessary steps to settle this unpleasant and very dangerous situation. Biolabs in the Ukrainian territory, they use dangerous pathogens that can be connected with the development of bioweapon components was earlier confirmed by American dignitaries. You remember statements by Victoria Nuland, who was not looking herself when she was saying that. We have repeatedly said, and now we're reiterating it again, that we're open to bilateral contacts with the American side on this subject to eliminate the existing irritants. We hope that Washington will take steps to remove concerns of Russia with regard to military and biological activity by the U.S. to ensure the total compliance of by the American side of obligations within BTWC. We have also paid attention to information disseminated by the media of crimes committed by Anglo-Saxon in Afghanistan. Veterans of the British Special Operation Forces told media about that. Some fellow soldiers felt their impunity and regularly committed killings.
Probably think that we're talking about terrorists, but we're talking about unarmed people. They killed off the wounded and even had a competition who killed more. Bloodthirsty, they wanted to settle accounts with Afghans during each of the so-called counter-terrorist operations. Even children fell victims. I'll tell you one more time. This is not fiction, not some kind of propaganda by the Kremlin or somebody else. Those are accounts of those who personally participated in it. To justify these terrible crimes, they planted firearms and fake grenades to the killed. Didn't the same things happen in Syria? They used false reports about operations to avoid investigations. The Afghan authorities draw attention of the then British Prime Minister David Cameron to the killings of civilians by the soldiers of the UK. However, no measures to bring military criminals to justice weren't made. We call on the British authorities to stop keeping silence about these cases and bring to justice all those responsible for killings of civilian Afghans. We receive a lot of question and comment on this topic regularly, but so we accumulated those questions and we want to give one answer. I mean the pensions. We do it because we receive a lot of requests about the situation with pensions and other social benefits to the citizens of Russian Federation abroad. The overall number of those eligible to receive pensions and other social benefits in foreign currency outside the territory of the Russian Federation stands at 84,119 people. They live in 74 countries in the world. Since the first quarter of 2025, because of stronger sanctions, the Gazprom Bank have difficulties with paying of the benefits in euros, including it in Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, and Bulgaria. The Russian side, in good faith and fully fulfills its commitment within bilateral relations. Their blame for the artificial crisis with the financing of pensions for Russian compatriots abroad fully belongs to the Western society and its finance institutes that in essence block transactions from the Bank of the Russian Federation that is authorized to make the transactions. Russia makes active efforts to settle the situation. On May 14th, by the way, we had one more important date, 70 years to the Warsaw Pact organization. It was based on the Treaty on Friendship, Cooperation, Mutual Assistance, signed on May 14, 1954. Will publish detailed material about it today on the website of the MFA. The events dedicated to the 80th anniversary of victory will go on throughout the year. Within the St. Petersburg International Legal Forum and CIS Legal Forum is going to take place. There will be a special section, the legal heritage of victory in the Great Patriotic War. It will discuss the protection of the common heritage of the CIS and the basic principles of the post-war world order. The video address will be sent to the participants by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Moderator of the section will be special representative of the President of the Russian Federation on International Cultural Cooperation, Mikhail Shvydkoy. The participants of the panel discussion will include representatives of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, the CIS Executive Committee, as well as Special Rapporteur of the UN Council on Human Rights, Elena Vudov-Gan. We will be happy to see all the participants of the St. Petersburg International Legal Forum as guests of this event. A priority of our country, as you know, it's the international humanitarian track, is promotion of the Russian language abroad. An important contribution on this track belongs to the Kostomer Forum that is hosted by the Pushkin State Institute of the Russian Language with the support of the Ministry of Science and Higher Education of the Russian Federation and under the auspices of the Commission of the Russian Federation on UNESCO. This year, on May the 21st through 24th, the fifth forum will take place. It will be titled "The Language and Culture." It will be dedicated to the 95th anniversary since the birth of the academician Vitaly Kostomarov. The forum is going to discuss key issues of the state policy in promotion of the Russian language and culture, broad status of the Russian language at the international arena, in certain regions and countries, modern practices of in language and culture studies, and other relevant issues. Russian and foreign experts, academicians, teachers, innovators, representatives of the authority, business, and cultural activists will participate. A special place will be given to the topic of the 80th anniversary of the victory. You can get to know the relevant program of the event, as well as to file for participation on the website of the forum. One more important event. On May 26th through 30th, Moscow is going to host the 42nd plenary week of the Eurasian Group on combating money laundering and financing of terrorism. The group includes 9 countries, 17 more countries, and 24 international regional organizations have observer status. The cooperation is based on principles of equality, mutual respect, and mutual account of interests. Throughout its work, this group has shaped an effective model and partnership that ensure transparency with the financial flows to identify and minimize risks in anti-laundering sphere. The participants include the representatives of the government of the Russian Federation, the Council of Federation of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation, Rosen for monitoring relevant ministries and agencies from Russia and from member states and other observer countries and organizations. In 2024-2025, under Russian presidency in the group, the measures are realized to strengthen interaction with FATF and other similar international organizations aimed at forming aligned approaches to education and covering events on the Eurasian region. We invite all Russian and foreign journalists to cover this event. In early May, blog tour took place for bloggers. It was organized together with Rosmolodaj, the NGO of the Office of World Youth Festival. 35 representatives from 19 countries started tours on memorial sites of the Great Patriotic War. There were 4 routes: Moscow, the Volgograd region, St. Petersburg, the Leningrad region, St. Petersburg, the Republic of Karelia, Moscow, the Tula region. The participants managed not only to get to know the true history of the Great Patriotic War, but only to personally talk to veterans and to learn about the heroic deeds and tragic events from their personal accounts. They shared their impressions in the new media, and I can say for sure that millions of subscribers saw these materials. I would like to mention one more event that was supported by the International Youth Movement. In May, the All Russia Week of Subotniks, dedicated to the year of the Defender of the Motherland and the 80th anniversary of victory, started. Activists from Bulgaria, Belgium, the Czech Republic, Germany, Serbia, Macedonia, Luxembourg, and other countries joined these initiatives. I'm glad that during these difficult times when the West try to rewrite history, the international youth interaction develops and expands. During our briefings, we talk a lot how we fight cancel culture that is practiced actively by the collective West. One of the projects countering disinformation is the initiative Knowledge Award, initiated by the Russian Knowledge Society. It was established for teachers, lecturers, authors, and bloggers in education in order to encourage enlightened projects. This competition is going to take place for the 5th time, and every year it only gains momentum. This time, representatives of 56 countries from almost all the continents are going to participate. There are several stages of selection, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is a part of the jury. Especially for the year of the defender of the motherland in Russia, that declared in 2025 by President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, the nomination for contribution to the preserving the memory of the heroic deeds of the defenders of the motherland was established. This contributes to the preservation of the historical memory and true patriotism. An important part is the nomination of Foreign Light of the Year, where foreign citizens participate regardless the country they live in. This year, for the first time, regional award ceremonies will take place. Every region of our country will have the best enlightening and the best enlightening project of the year. The applications can be filed until September this year on the website of the project. So I'm ready to take your questions. Is the International Affairs with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. On the 12th of May, the international organization Global Hunger Monitor published a report saying that the population of the Gaza Strip is starving, and 500,000 people are at risk to starve. What can I say about the humanitarian situation in Gaza? Is Russia planning to provide any humanitarian aid? And of course, humanitarian experts and regional experts and states acknowledge that the situation in Gaza Strip, they say it's catastrophic or close to it. It's confirmed by the evaluations of the relevant specialized units of the UN and international non-governmental organizations. I'm not going to cite them, you know them. After Israel introduced a full blockade of the enclave, the situation exacerbated even further. Any international efforts aimed at overcoming this humanitarian crisis won't be effective enough without a broader process of normalization of the situation in Gaza. A priority for today is to achieve a ceasefire as soon as possible that would ensure a secure humanitarian access to the sectors. To Russia, which traditionally provides humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, both bilaterally and through specialized UN agencies. Since October 2023, Russia's emergency ministry sent some 800 tons of cargoes. Besides, our country every year contributes to the World Food Program of the UN. $2 million will continue this complex contribution. Thank you. And if I may, one more question. Probably everyone cares about it. Do you have any information about the time of the beginning of the negotiations in Istanbul. I'll tell you one more time. Our delegation is already at Istanbul. Its composition is known. The relevant information was published on the web resources of the Kremlin. These negotiations are going to start in the second half of the day. This is the only credible information. Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Is Vestia with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Question 1. Why France shows such initiative in terms of anti-Russian EU sanctions? Can it and other EU countries to threaten Russia with sanctions in terms of settling the conflict in Ukraine? How can Russia respond to that? Briefly, it does not have any right to threaten. There is no provision in international law providing for that, and France should ensure the international law, but there is no mentioning of such a right in the international law that would give France or any other country to threaten any country with restrictions circumventing the UN Security Council. But it's no surprise. We know that Paris since 2022 is one of the zealous accomplices of hybrid war against our country. It's no news. Read the statement of President Macron. Probably the next day he's going to tell something different about negotiations, about tables, or where they want to sit at. But then the narratives go back to the previous route. But then they start blackmail and to give ultimatums. But the French de facto lead the party of war. They want to be together with the British, the main masters and sponsor of the Kyiv regime. France, its leadership, even earlier significantly contributed to the illegitimate sanctions and, as they say, packages. Now they try to blackmail us with more sanctions. Look at this. I'm not saying anything new. Let's look at the statement of President Macron himself. In his address to the nation, he said that he doesn't mean a subtle ceasefire. Now they call for unconditional ceasefire. It's clear that the Western masters of the Kiev regime wants to give it time, but they escalate the situation in general, and they don't even hide it. It was clear long ago that all those packages adopted by the EU has nothing to do with the settlement of the situation in Ukraine. I think even children understand that. This is an element of the policy of deterrent, now of a trade war. It's an attempt to compensate their problems in scientific and technical sphere and to prevent the humanitarian development of our country and contacts between our people who do not want to be Russophobic and to participate in aggressive anti-Russian campaign start against our country. Look, this comes into this. If they think that those measures are effective to some extent, if they were to have something to do with the settlement of the situation in Ukraine, now you see what happens. They announce a new package and then they announce another one.
Как вы знаете, ни один...
As you know, none of these packages won't be left without the corresponding response of the Russian Federation, which will take into account interests of our country and our people. I repeat, these measures will be taken in response to their actions and will continue to do so in the future. And to finish my answer to your question, speaking about the French nationals, attempts by anyone to speak with Russia in the language of threats, blackmail, ultimatums, or even to use derogatory terms in the conversation with us, all these attempts are futile. I'm not even saying that they are illegal because they do not observe any law, but these attempts, again, and I repeat it, are futile. And the most important thing is they need to speak about the results of their manipulations with international law and trust that our country has for their country when they have deceived the entire international community for so many years, when they explain how they are working to ensure the implementation of the Normandy in Minsk agreements, but as the French president said at that time, they weren't even going to do that. Thank you, Ms. Zakharova. We spoke about that, but we would like to speak about it again. The coalition of the willing pressed Russia to stop hostilities on May 12th. How legal is their requirement? The coalition of the willing made an ultimatum calling to stop hostilities on May 12th. Can we call these demands legitimate? These ultimatums, if have nothing to do with international law. I have already told you that they have made ultimatums about ceasefire, but yet they failed to observe that a special decision has already been declared by our country to introduce a 3-day ceasefire on the occasion of the anniversary of victory. So, as you can see, they don't see the real situation on the ground. They have nothing to do with the reality. They are doing that to create a specific atmosphere in their country, and it's hard to believe it because in the second half of the Second World War, France was part of the anti-Hitlerite coalition, and it's difficult to believe that France, some time ago, when French war veterans were alive, that France could do something to cast a shadow on the victory parade on May 9th and all the celebrations that took place at that time in Moscow. So all these ultimatums and hysteria serve the single purpose. They want nationals of their countries not to watch the military parade and to believe that Russia is isolated. It's difficult for us to hear that and to understand it, but it is easy for them. They're ready to go to Lvov. They are ready to organize the coalition of the willing. They are going to propose so many ridiculous things to nurture, to maintain an illusion in the minds of their people that their schemes haven't yet failed to isolate Russia. For them, it would be a failure. It would be a collapse and total fiasco. Despite the hybrid warfare launched against our people, rewriting of history, dismantlement of war memorials, threats against our citizens, and the trade war launched by the West against our country is still developing. It's celebrating the anniversary of victory. It receives foreign gas at all levels and shows its development prospects, its strength and power. Because for them,
to show that means that their attempts have failed, and it will show that they have taken billions of euros from the pockets of their nationals. That's why they're creating all these bubbles and changing the names. Just remember, they created associations of European peace or something like that, which sponsored military assistance for Ukraine, victory plans, some peace formulas. They're trying to invent something new all the time. They're trying to create a disguise so that the citizens of their country won't see the real picture of what is really going on, and so that they wouldn't see what their leaders have been doing all that time in reality. China Media Corporation, please. Hello, Ms. Zakharova. We have two questions. The recent high-level negotiations on trade and economy between China and U.S. Significant progress was reached, including the significant reduction in bilateral tariffs. China believes that such measure corresponds to the expectations of producers and consumers of both countries, as well as meet the interests of China, the United States, and the general interests of the global community. I would like to ask Russia, as a strategic partner that is committed to the principles of multilateralism, what is your opinion on this achievement, the trade de-escalation between China and the United States, the positive news for the global trade? This step will reduce the fears of global economic recession that we had over the past month due to the reduced volumes of international trade in goods. But due to the sharp increase in mutual tariffs between the largest economies of the world, we already can see a positive effect. In particular, the global financial markets have stabilized, and supply chains were re-established and restored. They were actually suffered the most from the high tariffs. We hope that the agreements between China and the United States and the creation of the mechanism of economic and trade consultations will help the two countries to develop the mutually acceptable parameters of trade and economic relations. The second question that is followed by the international community: China and Brazil and other countries have expressed their support for the direct dialogue between Russia and Ukraine. What is your opinion of the possibility to reach a significant breakthrough in the resumption of these negotiations? We thank everyone who closely follows the situation, who worries for the situation and supports the settlement of the situation in Ukraine through diplomatic and peaceful and political means. We noticed the recognition and support of the Russian President initiatives to start direct negotiations in Istanbul. We thank China and Brazil for their efforts, who were consistent in their position to find mutually acceptable solutions to the crisis. We also closely follow to the Kyiv rhetoric. I have provided so many quotes and examples today. Obviously, as earlier, the Kyiv regime is trying to create a show around negotiations. They have made different and mutually exceptional statements made by the Office of the President. The long-term and durable peace on the historical perspective, as the Russian President said, is our priority. That is the determination of the Russian delegation that has arrived to Istanbul already. These were its instructions at the negotiations, and this topic was presented in detail by the Russian President at the corresponding press conference. As for the Ukrainian side, to what it's ready, how it is ready to negotiations, today, this day in Istanbul will show their intentions. Thank you. Sinhala, please. Yes, I'm present. Thank you, Ms. Zakharova. I'm from Xinhua. Earlier, you answered the question of my colleague from the China Media Corporation. But anyway, I would like to ask my question about China-US high-level negotiations on trade and economic issues. They have recently taken place in Geneva. According to the official representative of the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, a significant progress was made at the negotiations by the significant reduction of bilateral customs tariffs. What can you add to what you have just already said? I can only add that these agreements will serve as the breeding ground for further development of balanced solutions, and such dialogue is built on the principles of pragmatism and mutual respect, and is able to provide constructive parameters for the further development of bilateral relations in this area. Thank you. Lenta.ru, please. Thank you. We have two questions for you. I'll start from the first question. Germany has expressed its desire to be present at the possible negotiations in Istanbul, and the same option is being considered by the US President Donald Trump. What is the Russian position on the presence of Western leaders at the Russia-Ukraine negotiations? Well, let's speak about Germany, because as for the statement of the American president, I didn't see it, but I saw the statement made by the German officials. Statement made by German, French, and British officials have a contrast sharply with what they actually do. They want to have a seat at the negotiating table. After that, they are talking about the settlement of the crisis, but at the same time, they continue to provide the Kyiv regime with military assistance. They provide unrealistic sums of money for Kyiv by disregarding the economic situation of their countries. They condone all monstrous neo-Nazi solutions of the Kyiv regime, not only just to suppress the rights, but to destroy the human rights on the territory of Ukraine. That's the reality. And given that reality, how can they lay claims on the seat at the negotiating table? And when they make statements to be involved in the political and diplomatic steps, they should correspond to their real actions. But if their words don't correspond to what they're actually doing, it's strange that adults are making such statements. But it's just the situation says for itself. And the second question, President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, planned to attend the military parade. However, the visit was cancelled. What is the current status of Russia-Azerbaijan relations these days? We develop our bilateral relations based on the declaration on union cooperation signed in February 2022. Our side is determined to consistently realize the potential of this document that is key for bilateral relations, as well as for addressing all matters that might arise in a mutually beneficial and mutually respectful basis. We have contacts at the various levels, at the level of the government, at the level of the foreign ministry. You know, it's quite surprising. I do apologize. Probably I wouldn't be able to give you the exact meaning, but the parade unit was sent by Azerbaijan and they attended the military parade, and they paid respect to the soldiers who served in various parts of the USSR, ethnic Azerbaijanis, I'm talking about them, as if it didn't happen. Why don't you pay attention to that? We paid attention to that, to be honest, and we were happy that at that day, together with the citizens of Azerbaijan and ethnic Azerbaijanis who live in Azerbaijan and in Russia and in other countries, that we were happy that we were united, that we were mutually respectful to the historic memory, and that we acknowledged the act of heroism committed by our ancestors. We need to pay most attention to that. And as for the schedule of leaders, it was already explained by the Presidential Executive Office. There are so many reasons for that, and it is wrong and very dangerous to not see the obvious thing. News.ru, please. Hello, Ms. Zakharova. News portal News.ru. Mikhail Rosen. I have two questions. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky stated that he is ready to have talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. At the same time, the Ukraine hasn't still abolished the decree of 2022, which bans Ukrainian officials to be in dialogue with Russia while it's still being led by Vladimir Putin. How can you explain this legal and political detail and conflict? That is the result of the chaos that was sought by the Western Bloc in Ukraine. They have created controlled chaos, but now the chaos is not controlled anymore. For decades, they have been making experiments with Ukraine, like organizing Maidan revolutions, having a direct impact on political figures, providing pastries and cookies on the square, training fighters there, creating coalition of the winners, expulsion of legitimate authorities. And now you're asking how is it possible that they have such illegal conflict? It is a man-made story. It was created in Ukraine by the collective West. Thank you. And second question, you stated that Russia will properly respond to the decision of Poland to close the Consulate General of Russia in Krakow, and you added that Warsaw deliberately destroys the relations with Moscow and acts against interests of ordinary Polish citizens. Are there any grounds to believe that after presidential elections scheduled on May 18th, the Rousophobia of Polish politicians would diminish to some extent, or probably quite worse, it might even lead to the freeze of diplomatic relations? We believe that this is such a low point in our relations that there is nothing to freeze anymore. Probably we could we couldn't do as the Polish regime. We wouldn't act against our own citizens, but yet they are doing that. No steps that will facilitate such state of affairs have never been taken by our country. We will respond properly to these actions. As for the prospects to reduce the degree of Russophobia, well, it is a question for the Polish authorities. They need to answer that, because we don't see any trends that the Russophobia will reduce in the future. We kindly ask the Polish authorities not to explain their problems with what Russia is doing, like they're trying to explain the situation with the fire that happened at the shopping center several years ago, and they have decided after that to close the Consulate General in Krakow. It's absurd. They're probably so comfortable to make Russia responsible for their failures, but the time will judge us. and will make everything right. Those responsible will be identified, but it will happen later. Probably new circumstances will be established, as it happened so many times in the past, as it happened in Switzerland, in Northern Europe, in city centers that are probably not have an access to waters. Just remember there were news about Soviet submarines, but later it was established that these were empty boats or buoys that were swimming on the surface of the water, and they have just provided it in the false way anyway.
But I don't think that you could buy Polish thinking people with such notions. Thank you very much. Do we have Swiss television with us? My name is Christo Franz. I would like to ask a question about a documentary that we are preparing, the neutrality of Switzerland. We have heard in recent years different statements in this regard coming from Russia. No, this is not true. You have not heard different statements. They all were similar. Well, we have heard repeated statements. Does Russia consider Switzerland as a neutral state, meaning that Switzerland does not supply weapons to Ukraine or Russia? And the second question is, if there is a conflict with Europe, would Russia respect the Swiss neutrality? Our answer to your question is no. We do not consider Switzerland as a neutral state. Switzerland has accepted a foreign policy strategy. It excludes Russia from the system of European security. It increases contacts with NATO, opened an office of communication of alliance in Geneva, participates in joint system of air defense of NATO, European air shield, and the instigation of the Kyiv regime in June last year, Switzerland held a summit of peace in Ukraine. Not being a member of the European Union, Switzerland joined all anti-Russian sanctions of the EU. How can we talk about any neutrality? For us, neutrality and Switzerland are different notions. They do not coincide. Your second question was, would Russia respect the neutrality of Switzerland? If we do not recognize it, how can we respect it? I think your question is about something else. You asked about a potential conflict. You should ask this question to those people who are feeling this conflict. Why do they need this militarization? They use Ukraine as a tool to put pressure on Russia, but it has failed. Now they decided to militarize their own countries to do what? Western Europe has gained significant experience in this regard, and each time it turned out to be a failure, to be a destructive experience. So I should say sorry. All our statements toward Western Europe included calls to the invisibility of security. We've always wanted to build this security on the basis of collective approaches, worked in the OSCE, and we worked with NATO in different formats and did our utmost. But every time our proposals were rejected, nobody listened to us, they rejected all our suggestions. So what are we talking about? Can I ask you one more question? Yes, of course. Do you have militarization process in Russia? Well, hostilities are being waged, but we have to be ready to deflect them. Every time UAVs target civilians, terrorist attacks take place, and we strengthen the existing formats and areas to defend ourselves. This is evident and stands to reason. Just imagine if somebody were trying to unlock your door. You would install a second lock to protect yourself. We respond to concrete threats. We see how many armaments are being delivered to Ukraine, and the amount of money that had been allocated to Ukraine so that they conduct terrorist attacks. So, of course, we increase our combat readiness to be able to face them effectively. We did not used to do that. We developed along this track as anyone else, but now we take into account the situation on the ground. But now we see NATO and the European Union taking certain steps, so we have to react, and you have to accept the reality. To countries that have not been members of NATO and who are in the vicinity of our country became members of NATO. Now they comport themselves in a very odd way. They act aggressively toward our country. They adopt anti-Russian sanctions. This is a new factor in this formula. Nobody tries to hide it, to hide the fact that they want to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia. This is a factor in the decision-making process. What are European countries led by? We don't know. They made up this Russian threat, and they reinforce this myth themselves. They help it dominate in the mindset of their own peoples. Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you. Do we have Ukraina Ru with us? Madam Zakharova, thank you very much for this opportunity to ask questions. I have two questions. The first is, why do Russia and Ukraine consider Turkey to be a good place for negotiations? Why do not consider India, China, Riyadh? Doesn't it mean that we meet Ukraine halfway? Well, the Russian president said that we have to resume negotiations where they were interrupted by Britain, which put pressure on the Kyiv regime back in 2022. So that was our rationale. But those talks turned out to be a failure. No, they weren't a failure. They were interrupted. Did Turkey interrupt them? No, that was Britain who did that. And that failure was reinforced by the Biden regime. So are we giving another chance to Ukraine? Our delegation has arrived in Turkey and is ready to work. Our provisions were declared as a basic approach by Russian President Vladimir Putin during his press conference on May 11th. Our comprehensive position was outlined by our president on June 14th, 2024. Thank you very much. My second question is, in which format and at what moment can Putin and Zelensky hold talks? As far as talks by heads of states go, you have to refer to the administration, the executive office of the president. Do we have Rudolph Channel with us? Thank you very much, Madam Zakharova. Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask this question. The Kurdistan Working Party, fighting against the official leadership of Turkey since 1984, took a decision on May 12, 2025 to cease the hostilities. How does Moscow assess the decision of this party, and how will this decision impact regional stability? I would give you a general answer. We welcome any measures aimed at settling this long-time, ancient, if I might say so, conflict and to cease violence. The Russian Federation is interested in sustaining and strengthening the public and political stability in Turkey. Turkey is our important neighbor and partner. We are convinced that the solution of all existing problems in the country should be done through peaceful means and democratic dialogue, and we hope that all rights and liberties will be ensured by ethnic and religious groups, and the Turkish people will benefit from it. Do we have Verelk with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. In May, Sergei Lavrov will visit Armenia. Do we have the date and the agenda of the visit? And is this visit connected with the opening of Consulate General of the Russian Federation in Sunik? As far as this visit goes, I can say that it is now under review. We will share all details of this visit with you, and we will answer also the second part of your question later. Do we have Reuters with us? Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. We have a question regarding today's talks in Istanbul. You have already answered the first part of my question, namely the provisions that Russia is going to present at these talks. You answered that Russian President Vladimir Putin voiced them on May 11th and last year as well. But are there any changes in the positions of the Russian Federation compared to what President Putin told during the press conference in June last year, and the conference and the documents that were presented at the conference in 2022? Let me answer your question. Yes, there are changes in our positions, and they are reflected in accordance with the changes on the ground. We just got a report from the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. The Russian army liberated the settlements of Novoalexandrovka and Torska in the DPR. So these are changes on the ground that you're talking about. But I'm concerned about a different issue. Your wonderful agency, very professional one, always puts forward the question of human rights. We have talked for decades with you about different hotspots and conflicts. Why haven't you voiced this concern? Our president, our foreign minister have talked about it at length. Why aren't you asking about what is being done to people, to their rights? They are being eradicated. Those rights are corrected with core interest of the local people. This is surprising. You just turn the page and this subject is not being discussed at all. The right to language, freedom of speech, religious freedom, it's like it does not matter. Well, it matters. These are the root causes of the conflict, which nobody cares about in the West. Now we have a new president in the US, and he recognizes them. The representatives of the global majority talked about them. How about the public? How about Western media? They cannot see the key factor in it. The people are being killed at all levels. They are trying. So the authorities are trying to reformat the mindsets of these people, to instill in them anti-human values that counter real humane values. So I would love to talk to you further if you have further questions. I am not attacking you. Don't think that. We're just having an interesting discussion. Thank you. My second question also is about the talks. Territories, border territories. Now, you're not interested about human rights, you're interested about territories. During the talks, will Russia insist on recognizing new regions in the borders that are now controlled by Russia, or will they be talking about the borders as they were when they were part of Ukraine? You'll maybe shudder at what I'm going to say, but you are now bordering on Ukraine, so that you should be so much concerned about it. But if you must know, if it is your priority concern, you want to understand the links between the talks and the borders, I would like to remind you of a quote by Foreign Minister Lavrov, September 28th. That happened. It was on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, and he said the following: in April 2022, in Istanbul, there was an agreement between Russian and Ukrainian negotiators, and he said if that had been implemented, Ukraine would retain parts of Donbass. But each time, he added, when negotiations fail, Ukraine gets smaller and smaller. Everybody should remember this quote. Everybody who is trying to find the links between the talks and the size of areas. Do we have News Fran with us? Hello? I just have one question. European Union is going to spend 9 million euros in the coming week using frozen Russian assets. They also plan to allocate €1 billion to manufacture UAVs and missiles in Ukraine. So my question is that an unscrupulous cynicism? Is it an act of provocation? Maybe the EU has large economic problems, so that they have to use Russian assets. Well, let me interrupt you. I am just now following the news, and the Zelensky called the level of the delegation, the Russian delegation in Istanbul, a fake one. We have presidential aide, deputy prime minister, deputy foreign minister. Well, who is using words like that? Fake. A clown who has no education, referring to people who have academic degrees, who have deserved recognition, who are professionals. So he is calling them fake. Who is he? On what grounds is he calling them that way? He used information technology and money to come to power. How can he have any doubts in anyone's professional capacity? He does not have any right to say things like that about high professionals. Our delegation of negotiators, as it was declared, three years ago, gave this fake regime a chance to preserve the country and the people. It was the chance that was not used by the Kyiv regime at that time. I'm sorry, but, well, I just had to say that. I wanted to ask you about the intention of the European Union to spend 900 million euros using Russian frozen assets to supply the Ukrainian regime with weapons, and additional 1 billion euros to manufacture UAVs and missiles. Is that an act of cynicism, provocation, or do they have just large economic problems, so they're just stealing Russian assets? It's all that you've mentioned, their economy, their development, their hypocrisy. Of course, it's hypocrisy. They're favoring peace in word, but indeed they are continuing to fuel the conflict, knowing that the supply of arms to Ukraine is a factor that can maintain the lives of Ukrainian people. But they continue to do that anyway, and they propose new initiatives on this track. They give them information, and especially cynical. It looks against the backdrop of the efforts by world leaders to propose an initiative to hold peace talks. Well, now we have those three leaders who are encouraging Zelensky to escalate the conflict further.
I'll tell you one more time, the Russian delegation that is in Istanbul is prepared for these negotiations. But let's go back to the EU representatives. We already told that they're coming up with the Russian threat. Why do they do that? Because this myth and spreading this myth helps them to divert the attention from the catastrophic situation that they are in. They have response to the sanctions. We see manipulations on all the tracks with in economy, finance. The economy either works on the market rules or receive what you created on your own with your legitimate sanctions. There's also endless politicization of the economy. They're coming up with new factors in environment. They're coming up with paradigms that ensure immediate profit on markets. They're not looking for new ways of energy, new types of energy, more green ones, but they use this topic for immediate profits. There's logic, but now it's turned into anti-logic because the essence of their actions is strange. It's clear why they do that, but it's difficult really to grasp. President of Russia recently gave a characteristic to this. The EU has a lot of problems. They are provoked by their illogical, stupid actions and unfriendly policy in terms of Russia. They leave off loans more and more. Now, President Trump came and he deals with the situation that President Biden left it, and he said that he had to save the U.S. The same situation the EU representatives have. They maintain the myth about the Russian threat, the so-called Russian threat, and they try to get into the pockets of their citizens. Now they resort to stealing, but for some countries it was a norm even before that. They steal from Venezuela, Lebanon, from many other countries, or some operators or certain structures. It's not for the first time in their history, it's a norm for them. And it was perpetrated throughout centuries. It's nothing new, but it's especially cynical. I'm telling this for the third time. It's especially cynical because all this money that they are giving to Ukraine, it's not because they don't want anything back. they want to take the resources out of the country and to make this country dependent. Colleagues, I have to wrap up the briefing. I'm going to answer all your questions individually. Thank you for your attention, and we're following the developments in Istanbul. We will inform you as we get more information. We are in close contact with our colleagues from our delegation in Istanbul. We're prepared to work, and we'll see what the other side is going to do. They talked the most about ceasefire. Let's see how they're going to respond when there's a real proposal. Are in close contact with our colleagues from our delegation in Istanbul. We're prepared to work, and we'll see what
использовали этот формат достаточно длительное время, он был очень популярен, потом началась пандемия, после пандемии инерция, и мы внедрили после пандемии, когда началась наша специальная военная операция, практику встреч министра с послами по разъяснению наших действий в связи с украинским кризисом. Таких встреч уже состоялось около 8, по-моему. Очередная планируется в самое ближайшее время. Но я очень рад, что теперь мы возобновляем полноценную работу дипломатического клуба, которая будет посвящена рассмотрению всех интересующих вас проблем, в том числе с подключением нашего экспертного сообщества, академической науки, деятелей культуры, искусства, ну и, конечно, представителей российских регионов. Я очень рад видеть здесь Глеба Сергеевича Никитина, губернатора Нижегородской области, который много внимания уделяет внешним факторам развития своего региона, укрепления связей в контексте нашей внешнеполитической линии. Мы заинтересованы также в том, чтобы к этой работе подключались те, кто работает с нашей дипломатической академией. Именно на этой площадке, на площадке Дипакадемии, зарождались традиции дипломатического клуба. И, конечно, хотел бы поблагодарить исполняющего обязанности